Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Presence Posse presents Presence and Joy is our theme for the evening, or afternoon, or morning, depending on where you live. And I have no idea what day it is in Australia, but if you're here, welcome. I have me, Danielle McMahon, and Bobby Cobb from the Presence Posse, and I'm Miriam Siegel. Presence and Joy. Actually, I'm going to go straight to the definition that I found before this talk, which I thought it was really interesting. We can start with part one of the definition of joy. The emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune, or by the prospect of possessing what one desires. Should I read that again?
Yes, please.
Hang on a second. The emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune, or by the prospect of possessing what one desires. That's one of the definitions of joy.
Is there another?
Yeah? Would you like to hear it first, or do you want to talk about this one by itself? Danielle's nodding.
I'm curious to hear the other one first because I have a lot of personal pushback against that first definition, and I don't want to go on a big diatribe only to find out that it was superfluous in the second definition.
Well, in a way, it would be interesting to hear the diatribe because it's
All
like,
right.
how do we as the Presence Posse feel about or react to or whatever? What do we think of that
Okay, we'll
particular
do it your
definition of joy? You don't have to do it my way. It was just kind of curious. Because it would be easy to say, well, that's more like it, but this one. But yeah, so since something comes up in you right away, Bobby, I'm just curious what that is.
Yeah, so the thing that I hear as I'm listening to that definition is the first part of it I didn't like a little because it pointed toward an external solution for whatever internal joy that you're experiencing. And from my perspective and point of view, that is never, ever the case. Although it is that definition, I believe, could and would be a very common definition if you just ask a man on the street. But I see that as more of a function of how well the conditioning is working than it is that it's an accurate definition. Then in the second part, which I don't remember word for word, but in anticipation of, a windfall or something coming your way, there is no doubt that can and does bring joy. I was in a conversation a couple of weeks ago that might have led to a big corporate gig. It doesn't appear that it's going to. And in the moment, I was experiencing joy because I foresaw, and it was easy to extrapolate out into the future how many things would be different, and in my preferential way of wanting life to unfold would be better. However, it didn't come to pass, and that joy was transient, and I just feel like that is that definition is a reflection of our conditioning that is out there, and I think it misses the mark. So more on that if necessary after part two is read.
Very cool. Danielle, would
I'll
you like to
say,
say?
yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there.
I know you will. That's why I'm waiting. Danielle, do you have anything you'd like to add or say or disagree with or whatever?
No, I had a very similar reaction to it in that I was initially thinking that presence is where joy is experienced. And it's not conditioned on outside circumstances. It's the joy of life. It's not the joy of life circumstances, right? So that to me is sort of the difference. And I hadn't really thought about the definition of it. For me, that is the difference between happiness and joy. Like happiness, I can get more from external conditions. Joy is just who I am. It's uncovered in the coming to presence and to understanding that it's inherent in being human. That's the difference that I see in those two descriptors of emotion, those two words. But I was interested to hear Bobby say that he was okay with the anticipatory joy because he tends to talk about time travel, and that would be time traveling to experience joy in anticipation of something that might be. But it's interesting because you can experience joy or happiness or an anticipatory emotion, right? But if you do it the way Bobby did, which this is fun to think about and not be invested in it, so then when it falls apart, you're depressed, right? Like that you haven't invested your joy in that. You just enjoyed the thought of it, enjoyed the process of. So, yeah, that was an interesting piece of it for me.
And I'm happy to address that.
I was going to ask you, would you like to respond to that right away? That's, by the way, just beautiful responses here, like listening to you guys talk about joy and happiness and your experiences, and some really, really powerful words, painting really clear pictures. So thank you for that. Bobby, go for it.
So the joy in the moment is in the moment. So temporarily I thought I had experienced a win, and everything that you said, Danielle, is 100% spot on. And I very quickly caught myself in like, okay, this hasn't happened yet, nothing's changed, so go ahead and revel in this. But what's the message? So there was in my own experience, there was another layer, because I believe our emotions are telling us about our circumstances. I believe they are not about our circumstances. They are wisdom that is flowing through us. So in very quickly in that moment, and then more quickly after I realized that I wasn't going to I wasn't going to win this deal. Very quickly after that, I used it as an opportunity to kind of go within and go, okay, I was very excited about this happening. So what is that excitement telling me? And it pointed, marketing, we were talking about before we came on, not really the super go-to thing in our wheelhouse when we want to experience joy. For me personally, it tends to be more of a grind. I view it as a necessary evil. It's a have to, not a get to. And the wisdom of that joy in the moment was, hooray, no more marketing for a time being, which that caused me to say, all right, what is this interesting, weird relationship that I've got with marketing? So the joy I experienced in the moment was real joy. And I recognized that it was, or happiness. I actually like that distinction, Danielle. It was happiness in the moment, the same happiness that I experienced a couple of years ago when my favorite football team won the Super Bowl. I mean, I was elated. Um, and for that, that's just a team that I have loved and followed for almost 50 years, 45 years. And, so that was different. I mean, that was just, the same pride that you have when your kid does something really, really cool. It's not a life-changing experience, but it's fun to just soak in that joy or happiness in the moment. And then it can also be a useful tool for inquiry to go within and go, all right, what's going on here? What is the hidden message that I need to see? For me, it was, I can build the things that this was going to provide, and I should. My gut is telling me that's a hole in my bucket, that if it's plugged, life will have more perpetual joy. So it was both. There was kind of, or not kind of, there was time traveling involved because I was projecting myself out into the future and looking for the problems that were going to be solved as a result of this happenstance. And so I pursued it with vigor, and I did everything that I could. And at the same time, I said, okay, what's the message here? What's the hidden message that this thing that may or may not happen is bringing me so much joy that I'm on the verge of attaching, my happiness to it. I think that's the attachment that Buddha was talking about in clinging.
Wow. Well, we can just end right there. That was just.
No, we can't. We haven't heard from you.
That's right.
There's like nothing more to say. Actually, that's not true, but that was fantastic. I was just thinking as I'm listening to you guys, I'll put my information up here for people who don't know who I am. This idea of more of a state of joy and a transitory joy or happiness or whatever, depending on how each person, I guess, describes it or experiences it. Where there's nothing wrong with transitory and there's nothing wrong with this sort of general constant experience of being in the world, which is the joy, hopefully a joyful experience. I've been actually the last week-ish looking at ecstasy, not ecstasy the drug, but experience of ecstasy, which I would call I've never taken ecstasy the drug, so we're talking about the experience, my own experience of ecstasy. And because that's a very strong, joyful state, ecstasy for me. That's quite a powerful state. And noticing that without grounding, that could really send me off balance. That kind of intense joy that's ecstatic. It would send me, it's like, if it goes too far, I don't notice. I'm not present enough. I don't notice what's going on around me. And I could really, I have someone I know was telling about feeling sort of this intense joy while driving his motorcycle and had an accident. It wasn't a serious one, but it was an accident. And realizing that it was, okay, ungrounded joy is not necessarily healthy. Like many people want to achieve more joy, more happiness. They think that's going to make them happier. And without necessarily realizing that could be a flight. It's taking you away from what is, and a good grounded ability to be with what is, which, as in my experience, as I am with what is, and if a flowing state, it's joy even in pain. It's a genuine expression of me in the world or being in the world. That in itself is joy, even if there's pain. And I don't need to get attached to either of them if they're flowing, if they just are. I don't have to keep them. I don't have to do anything to hang on to them. They just are there, which is kind of nice. I'm just going to go back to this definition for a second. I don't know if that made sense to anybody, but that's my experience. I'm noticing in this definition, the emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune. It's evoked by, in the definition of joy, or by a prospect of possessing what one desires. Possessing what one desires. That's pretty strong words, like possessing. It's not enough to look forward to it. Well, it is actually the prospect of possessing, but actually, yeah, now we're coming to something I actually wanted to ask you guys about. The prospect of possessing what one desires. It's not possessing it, it's the prospect of possessing it, according to this definition. So many people think, oh, if I just get that car,
Mm.
The car will give me tremendous joy. But here it's not saying that. Here it's saying it's the idea. It's the thought of getting the car. And I don't necessarily agree with that. It's not the possessing. Like sometimes I've said this before, actually, that it's I call it the thing. It's like some people will say, well, it's a journey towards the thing. That's living. That's the joy. That's the real spice of life. And for me, it's quite often the thing. I get the thing and I'm like, I'm enjoying doing whatever I was going to do with this thing. And every time I use this thing, there's joy in it, the experience of this thing. So for me, it's like, yeah, it's the thing. It's not just the journey, it's the thing. And it's just, I mean, and it's almost like we're not supposed to want a thing. Just be in the process of getting there, and that's the real value. No, not for me. It's also the thing. Did you guys have anything do you want to say about that?
Yeah,
Well,
something is definitely popping up, and because this recent experience is so fresh in my memory, the corporate gig that was not, and there was joy for me in the idea that I may get it. I was kind of high as a kite for 2 days. It gave me a lot of juice. I had to submit a video about what my training would focus around, which I did. And I think I created a really amazing product. And there was a lot of joy in doing it. And then I found out that I, hadn't made the first cut and that they were moving forward with other people and just, hold my horses, so to speak. uh, and that was okay. And I think, and this is me doing a hypothetical, but I think had I gotten the gig, I would have looked back and thought, well, of course you did, because you're teaching this wonderful stuff and you created this wonderful video. And it would have almost been, it definitely would not have been a letdown, but the realization that I would have to go out and create all of the collateral material for this new training, which was going to be a unique first time thing that I did, would have been to me as though I had reached the soft sand on the beach. Normally when you're walking to the beach, there's maybe a parking lot or a well-worn path that you can walk on. And then there's that part of the beach that is like really the soft sand. And then you get down close enough to the ocean and you're back to hard pack again. And I know just how I'm wired. I tend to celebrate the fact that I'm at the beach, and then I celebrate the fact that I'm in the water. But that trek through the soft sand to me is not, it's something that I have to do in order to get to something. And that would have been how I was. It was like, okay, you won this gig, it's a good gig. And now what? Now you got to put all of this stuff together. So there would have been a little bit of a letdown. And then at the end, and this is just how I'm wired. I'm excited at the beginning. I'm excited to birth the baby. I'm excited to roll out what it is. But that whole middle process for me is, that's something worthy of exploration. That it seems like drudgery to me. And if I could change that, it wasn't drudgery making the original film, but creating all of the collateral material, I think in all likelihood would have been perceived as drudgery by the Bobby.
You want to get in here, Danielle?
Yeah, so my first reaction was it's the anticipation. Well, I think the anticipation of pain is often worse than the actual pain. That I agree with. So is the anticipation of joy more joyful than the actual thing? I don't know. I mean, that's the first thing that popped up for me. Is that really? Well, I think that's true of pain. It might be true of joy as well. That the anticipation is as joyful, if not more so, than the actual acquiring of whatever the thing is. But yeah, if you haven't overdone it and you really do enjoy the thing, then there's nothing wrong with that because you explained it in a way like, okay, so I live in flow and I experience the moment. So if you lose the thing, that'd be the next moment, right? You can enjoy it while you have it and still be in process with it, like in the journey, right? And have it for your journey. And yeah, so I didn't think it was a contradictory thing to enjoy the thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. It doesn't feel like it to me. But also, I've been listening to you, Bobby, talk about, and both of you actually, explaining this sort of anticipatory joy, like the joy connected to the anticipation. The idea that we would do anything without some sort of idea that it's going to be good. I mean, there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of things in life where just getting out of bed because we have to go to the bathroom, or getting out of bed because we have to go make something to eat so that we can survive. That's a thing in itself. But then there's the, I would like to do this because, right? I want to get up and, I don't know, some people like painting pictures. So I'll just take that as an example. I want to get up and paint. Well, because there's something about, I know that experience, I feel that experience, it is joyful, it's creative, whatever. There's a, I think, anticipatory joy, delight, whatever you want to call it. There's something in that that's just inherently human. It's like, oh, I'm going to go swimming. Well, because I anticipate some sort of joy with it, not just to, dive in ice cold water to freeze myself or something. I'm going to go and I'm going to splash around in water and it's going to be great. And so there's something inherently human with looking forward to what I perceive will be some sort of pleasurable experience, if that makes any sense. So, like, I get when Eckhart Tolle, he'll talk about, you feel the emotions, you don't try to change them or get rid of them or anything, and you're present. So it's not like you attach yourself to the pain or the joy. It may be there, but it's not something it's not you, it's not your life. And at the beginning, I wondered about that because I thought, well, I get the pain thing, not getting attached to pain and wallowing in it and letting it drive you and all of that, or hold you back or whatever. But I didn't get the joy because it seemed so obvious to me that, of course, we want pleasurable experiences. We want joy and delight in our lives, happiness. It seems so inherent to us, at least in my way of thinking. But I like the idea of not attaching to it, like I have to have it. There's the hunt for more joy, more happiness. It's just allowing it to be there, but it doesn't mean I don't know where I can get it. I don't assume it will be there, but I know that for example, if I go swimming in the fjord here, then generally speaking, it feels good. This is the first time in this moment that I swim in the fjord because this is the only moment I have. But still, there's this, why would I do it? I will do it because there's this, I like swimming, for example. There's a delight in that. Without an attachment, I have to, but there's still an anticipation in there somehow, at least for me. Does that make any sense to you guys at all?
Go ahead, Danielle.
It does, because I feel like you're pointing to is freedom versus obligation, or as Bobby said earlier, it feels like drudgery to him. And there's a certain amount of life that is drudgery, right? Like, I used that word and somebody said, "That's a really strong word." And I'm like, well, I don't know. I can come up with something else. But the dishes have to be done, the food has to be made, the laundry has to be done. All those things are just a part of life. And they don't have to feel like not joyous, right? Whatever the opposite of that would be. But they're not particularly inspiring joy either. They're just maintenance, right? It's just an obligation to being a human on the planet. You have to do a few things to survive and to be comfortable and to keep your creature comforts, whatever. So some of that can be joyful. I mean, if you really want it to be, you can bring your presence to that. And I have warm running water, and I like the feel of soap on my hands and having clean dishes. And look at these pretty dishes that I have, or whatever. You can bring that if you make an effort. But some things you don't have to make an effort. You show up to swim, it's fun, right? You don't have to find the joy in it because you have a memory of the joy of having done it before. So
I really love that. And thank you for saying that, because you actually brought an example I was experiencing in myself. This washing the dishes. That's one of the things I don't rush to do. If I don't, I mean, sometimes I do, but there's this sort of greasy, like if they're really greasy dishes, there's a lot of fatty dishes because it's an extra. I don't like the feeling of, I generally don't like the feeling of fat on my skin. It can take a while to get rid of it. Yeah. So, or perhaps the word is I can, if I'm present to it, it's actually a really interesting experience. And the smoothness and just the fascination of the actual fatty feeling of it, and the hot water or the warm water. And just the other day I was washing and the water got really hot, and I was feeling that, and it was uncomfortable, and it was fascinating because it was uncomfortable. And I thought, I've walked barefoot on burning coals, but putting my hand under this hot water is painful right now. How does that happen? Right? And then just get really curious about what's this right now. So if I think about the drudgery, like, oh, washing dishes, then I can create that sort of state in myself that is, whereas if I'm just present, there's just a ton of experiences going on. And most of them are really cool. And I notice when I get to that point, even the yucky feeling with the fatty whatever on my hands is really cool. And there's a lot of joy in that, just experiencing what is, for me.
I like that. It's like every moment has joy built into it if we are giving the moment our undivided attention. That there can be joy. I mean, using cooking, I'm not a good cook. I've never been a good cook. I've rarely been in a position where I was cooking for myself. But recently, I've really gotten into cooking, and it's fun to bring out the ingredients, and it's fun to think about what I could make in different ways of cooking it and different ways of doing spices. So, old dogs can learn new tricks, I guess. And I want to go back to one of the things that you said, Miriam, of innately human, which to me almost seems like jumbo shrimp and military intelligence. I forget what those pairs are called. There's a word for it.
oxymorons.
Oxymoron.
Oxymoron.
Thank
It's
you.
actually
Yes.
oxymoron, yeah.
Yeah, it almost seems like an oxymoronic statement that if you look at it another way, And the way would be to recognize that your emotions are guidance, they are intelligent, they are wisdom. So attaching a task, and I'm with you on the dishes. I've got a sink full of them right now that need to be processed. And that can tell me that, all right, what are you missing in this process, that this is something that you want to push away? Because I know I feel good, once they're done and once the kitchen's all nice and clean and I'm now guest ready. I mean, in my head, it's like if dishes are all over the place, I'm like, God, I hope nobody shows up and see how I really live. And then there is that satisfaction of having it all done and feeling like, okay, cool. Now if somebody shows up, they'll think I'm together. I mean, part of that is me time traveling and me wanting to have a story to support my narrative and all of that. So from my perspective, that's me feeling the feel of being sucked back into the illusion. And at the same point, there is guidance there about, this in my mind is currently categorized as a have to, not a get to. And other things that seem drudgery to a lot of people, I do find joy in them. So I just use those moments when I feel disconnected as an opportunity to kind of pull a thread and see, okay, what's going on here? And I want to suggest that what you characterize as, Miriam, as the inherent things within us, I would just invite you to be open to the fact that it may be conditioning. Because if you look at any advertisement, and I think it was 2003 or 2004, somebody did a study that Seth Godin has quoted frequently. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that we see 1 million marketing messages a year, which breaks down to over 4,000 or close to 4,000 a day. And 5 million, I'm getting my math wrong, but it's out there on the internet. But the formula for every ad is you in your current condition plus XYZ, whatever that happens to be, 6-pack abs, a better bank balance, the right relationship, the right job, whatever equals you 2.0. And so that study that I'm no longer able to quote, obviously, was done in 2003, 2004. So one can only imagine now that social media is what it is and we spend the amount of time. We probably are a factor of X times that currently. So we're constantly being bombarded that you're not enough yet. But if you get this set of steak knives and you get the right grill and you drive the right car, then it's going to be you as happy. So I think a big portion of it is just that we are conditioned to pursue happiness and to ignore the joy that is inherent in the moment.
I think if I can respond to that.
Yeah, please.
We may be talking about two different things.
Okay.
What I was thinking of as being inherently human is, like, if I'm thinking of an infant will reach out to something to explore it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I'm thinking, why? There's something about that thing. Okay, I'm gonna get that thing and it's gonna be really cool and I'm gonna check this out. There's something about moving towards with curiosity that I think is inherently human. So, and if I have the experience of when I go to the fjord and jump in the water at a certain temperature, it feels good. Then if I think, oh, well, at 3 o'clock, I have time to go down to the fjord and jump in the water, I think it's a human thing to look forward to that at some level.
Yeah.
The sort of anticipatory. So I'm kind of, what I was trying to illustrate was anticipatory joy, like looking forward to something, is not necessarily a bad thing, because it actually, in some way, helps. If I speak from my own perspective, it may help me to move towards things that are good for me, like
Yes.
healthy for me, that create a life where I experience a lot of pleasure and calm and joy in being alive. So it's not, so I guess my point was, it's not necessarily a bad thing, this sort of anticipatory delight, as long as I'm not attached to it. That was my point more, that I have to go down and swim or I won't be happy, right? There's not a condition on it, but I think it's sort of inherently human to reach out for that colorful thing over there and check it out.
Yeah.
And just the joy of that experience.
Yeah.
For example, I also wanted to bring up, if you don't mind, how I can get in the way of joy. And we were talking about doing the dishes. And I get really curious about this. I think this is really cool. And this is also a joyful process for me, where if I'm feeling discomfort in connection with the thought of doing the dishes, what's my thought actually? Because I'm telling myself something about that situation that is creating a discomfort. Perhaps it's, I would rather be doing this than this, or oh, there's a fatty pan there and I really don't want to get it on my greasy pan. I don't want to get it on my hands, or whatever I'm doing to create an experience of not joy, whatever it is, but not joy. But it's all me.
Yes.
I mean, unless I'm putting my hand over burning whatever and feeling a lot of pain. Why would I do that? But then I did walk barefoot on burning coals, but that was for experience. But generally, I do not turn towards harm, self-harming experience. But I do notice that the majority of the time, I can't say all of the time because I am not always present, but the majority of the time, if I'm experiencing discomfort in connection with something, especially if that's also anticipatory, I'm creating that. I'm putting not joy there myself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
To me, it makes total sense. Yeah, that is, you are describing what I talk about with time traveling, that if you are, the moment can be joyful, and the moment when you realize, perhaps your 3 o'clock appointment just canceled, and it's like, okay, now I can go swim in the fjords. And so there is joy in that moment. Going back to the whale blubber on the dishes. I don't know why it's showing up for me that way.
Because I live in Norway.
Maybe. Going back to that, and going back to the suggestion that I had earlier, that our emotions can also be viewed as guidance. And so the guidance there for you can be, you're not in the moment right now. Same way when I think about marketing and I feel like I'm hitting the soft sand, I'm not in the moment right now. And there are cool little things that you can do to reframe that and give it an entirely new perspective. And it's a great opportunity for some deep self-inquiry to go, okay, here's what I'm feeling right now in this moment. Thinking about swimming in the fjords, thinking about doing the dishes later, thinking about whatever it is that you're thinking about. And just begin with the question, what are these emotions telling me? If we agree that it's not telling us about our circumstances, then it must be telling us about something else. And what is the message that I'm receiving in this moment? And, just kind of another thread to pull, so to speak.
I'm going to throw in a thing for a second, and then I want to maybe go to the next definition or two of joy. If I'm looking at the dishes, so this time traveling, at least not being present, I'm looking at the dishes going, I don't want to do the dishes. So if I choose to put that thought in there, whatever it is, like, oh, I don't want to get my hands greasy, I could just as easily have another thought that is, oh, it's going to feel really good once I've done the dishes because then they're done. And then I have free time on my hands to do whatever I want. So just to play with that sort of idea of presence and joy, or presence at all, is what thought, what circumstance, scenario am I choosing to focus on when I look at the dishes? Because the dishes are there. Presence is, there they are. And here I am. And then I can make it into whatever I want if I want to make it into something. I can make it into, oh, it's going to feel really good when I'm done. Or, ooh, yuck. It's going to feel really gross when I do it. Where am I putting my focus if I'm not focusing on right now? And that's really interesting to look at too. This sort of idea of what choice am I choosing, the half cup, the full, half full, and or half empty kind of thing. I'm like, why am I choosing either of them and not just being with the glass of water, right? So, that's that whole thing about how present, am I present when I'm thinking of anything at all than right now to do with what is right there? I would say not, but it does. As I say, it's kind of a human thing that I don't know anybody who doesn't do that at some point or other. Think of something to do with something.
Yeah, well, the whole industry of positive mental attitude is based on our ability and in inviting us to participate in just that exercise. And it is interesting to, play around with that and see what is it about the greasy pots that make that seem like a have to, not a get to, and how can I flip that around? And if you pull a little further, and I believe it ultimately pulls you back to being in the present moment. And the little tools and tricks and tactics are all valuable and they all work, to a degree, and it could be worth exploring something on even a deeper level, perhaps.
I think all of that is an invitation. Danielle, would you like to say anything about this, or should I just go to the definition?
I have perhaps a question. We're talking about anticipation, and in your example of anticipating joy and something that you've experienced before, you also bring in memory, right? So the memory attached to it contributes to. So if I had a really good time as a child helping to wash the dishes because it was time that I got to spend alone with my mom, then I might have a different memory of that than my hands get greasy, right? So, and those things can certainly change. And I feel like it's as important to presence to not be attached to memories as it is to not be attached to the anticipation. And the same is true when I first started sort of dealing with that. Like, I don't mind letting all the bad memories go, but do I need to let the good memories go? Like, well, in order to be present, yeah, I do. I don't need to be attached to those either. So,
yeah,
that was an interesting process for me.
Yes. It doesn't mean you don't have the memories. It's just that they don't define who you are or how you are or what you do or
The present moment.
yeah. Because I actually have a friend of mine, we have had some conversations about this, where I explained that this situation might remind me of a previous situation, but this situation is not that situation. And so I don't feel that when I'm in this, unless I want to. I mean, unless I grab onto it and attach to it and make a thing out of it, but then I have to make a thing out of it. Otherwise, I'm just here. This is a brand new situation I've never been in before because it's right now. And then I get to do whatever in that situation. Now, there's a difference just for people who may think I'm absolutely out of my mind. We do have procedural memory. We've got this sort of
Right.
our body. I mean, we wouldn't be able to brush our teeth over and over and over again if we didn't have that. So we're not talking about you're not supposed to have any memory, but it's what we do with memory, whether we do with memory or whether we be with memory. Like just allow it to be there.
Say that again.
Whether we do with memory or be with memory. It doesn't mean I don't have the memory, but do I have to make a thing out of it? If I'm brushing my teeth, I'm brushing my teeth. How present am I to myself brushing my teeth? Right? It doesn't mean I have to let go any sort of experience of having brushed my teeth. That would be demanding a lot of a human being. But I don't do the memory. I be the memory. Was that a little bit clearer?
It was clear the first time. I needed twice to hear it.
Okay. Y'all want to go to the other definitions?
Yeah,
the
let's
other
see what
parts of
else
the
they
definition?
have to say.
I'm thinking maybe I should read both of them. One is a state of happiness or felicity. And then there's a word attached to that that's bliss. So a state of happiness or felicity, bliss. And the other one is a source or cause of delight. A source or cause of delight. We were talking earlier about this state of happiness, state of bliss, state of felicity.
Yeah, but if something is a joy to me, my daughter is a joy to me, I understand that definition in that context. Right? Like something outside of you can be a joy, but it's not. Yeah, so I guess I can experience presence, or I can experience joy in the presence of, right? That other thing or being or whatever, they are a joy to me. I understand that.
That's like the source of or cause of delight.
Yeah. That's
it's actually, sorry, go ahead.
Last one you read?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one made sense to me. I'm not so sure about the second one. I can't remember.
The interesting thing about that, sorry, is just joy is defined as a source or cause of delight. Joy is a source of joy, in a way.
Yeah. It's a very circular definition.
But it kind of makes sense.
Right.
But sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say of the 3 or 4 that you've read so far, that's the one that makes the most sense to me by far, and seems to be closer to what we've been talking about, here for the last little bit of time.
So there's the state of happiness, the state of bliss. We were sort of talking about that at the beginning, as rather than something evoking or this anticipatory prospect of acquiring, there's this general state, which which is presence. Actually, presence in itself, presence is a joyful state, if you're going to use that word, I guess. That's, yeah. So they all kind of make sense, but they've got there's different properties or different aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question, I'm going to put it up again, that one of the people watching has brought up is, what about embracing ourselves as a source of joy? We've kind of been in that as well, but do you guys want to say anything more about that?
And I think that is exactly what is this whole conversation is leading us to, and to the point that I've, pardon me, chimed in. That's what I've been attempting to point toward, is that every moment in and of itself can and maybe should be a joyful moment. And when we're noticing something is not joyful, or when we are experiencing an irrational exuberance about something that we are only imagining may happen. And the corporate gig that I was talking about earlier, that was a probability amplitude. I mean, it was something that could realistically happen. I was invited to submit a proposal, which I did, and there was joy in that moment, and there was information in that moment. And to the degree, I got a little attached to it, and I was kind of blessed with the fact that this company is on a very short timeline, and they were very quick to tell me, thanks for your submission, not what we're looking for, maybe some other time. And so, like, from Monday to Wednesday, I rode this wave, and then the wave collapsed, and I was back to just, a guy on a surfboard in the ocean waiting for the next wave, or the guy on the surfboard in the middle of the ocean, soaking in every moment of every day and enjoying the moment for what it is, and pulling the thread to say, what was it about that unique experience that I had that caused me to imagine this joy? So that now becomes another thread that we can pull on. What's missing in your life? And the answer that I got back was that my marketing currently is not enough, and it needs to be more. And so I'm pursuing that. And the fact that it was a beautiful wave that was a short wave was kind of a blessing in disguise, or it was life unfolding divinely, as it always does. You get to decide which.
Yeah, good point.
Both are true.
Embracing ourselves, yeah. Embracing ourselves as the source of joy. Do you have anything to say about that? Because I've got a thought or two about it, but Danielle, do you have anything to say to that?
Go ahead.
There's something about ourselves as the source of joy that doesn't quite, it's more like when I'm in presence and flowing in presence. Like now, as I sit with you guys, I don't notice I. Like in language, then I have to say I'm talking and I'm with you. But I don't notice I. There's just am.
Mm.
And so that's, maybe it's just, I'm just being sort of picky about like, this is not a criticism. It's more like what's going on in me when I see this. Embracing myself as a source of joy. Being is joy. Just, it has nothing to do with me. Not me, like me.
And this is where language gets difficult.
Yeah, we don't have words for this.
So that's a belief that I've decided that I was going to stop saying and just said. But because language doesn't have to be difficult, but I definitely have gone through a phase where I want to describe something and I don't have the words to describe it. So then I came up with this belief that it was difficult. And it's not. I mean, it can be if I want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. There is a difference in considering yourself the source and considering source as joy. So that's how I would say the difference for you in that, in hearing it. Source is joy. That's our innate energy, our life force that makes our little skin suits come alive, right? With our dreary egos in tow, we know that we are more than that. That's what the Presence Posse is saying.
And isn't
We are
that
here for that.
that's such a weird thing, though. It's like, okay, we know that we're more than that implies that we are. This gets really confusing.
There you go,
But
in
it
your
doesn't really
circular
matter.
definition
Yeah,
again.
it doesn't really matter as long as, because I think, okay, maybe there are no perfect words to describe, but somehow in the intention to describe, intention to communicate, intention to express what is, something happens in that for some people, and they let go of whatever the attachment to I is and can experience, just flow, that energy that is just life, that I can call joy or whatever I want to call it, but it's not an I. It doesn't really matter. I could talk about it forever. It doesn't matter. And of course, trying to talk about it can be a way of forcing it. It's, why don't you just be with it? Because I can also make that into a thing. So anyway, we are nearing the end of our hour, or the top of our hour, depending on what dialect you speak. Is there anything either of you would like to say about you, or something you'd like to offer people who are watching, or whatever, before we conclude?
Go ahead,
I
Daniel.
mentioned it on the last couple of broadcasts I've been on that we're having a retreat here to experience personal peace with the ponies, June 11th and 12th. You can message me if you're interested in that. I'd be glad to talk to you about it. As part of the posse in our little conversation, and we really was a very short conversation about marketing, that's something else that I'm going to give up. That marketing has to be not my thing, right? It can be fun, and I can enjoy talking with you about what I have to offer, and I can be present with it. So that was a fun part of today's conversation. That was totally unplanned. So thanks.
Things work out as they do.
And we're present to whatever
Divinely
shows up in the
unfolding.
moment. That's cool. Bobbers?
Yeah, I would actually hope that we continue this conversation, because some of the threads that we've started to pull on, to me, are so close to like the teaching tools and mileposts that I use in my coaching practice. So I'm really super excited that we hopefully will take even a deeper dive into this. This has been one of my, I mean, I love every one of these that we do every week, but this has been one of my faves. And I really feel like we uncovered a cool field of truffles in today's conversation.
I love that picture. Do you want to say anything about our mindful life or anything like that?
Yeah, if you're interested in diving more into this, you probably can tell from this conversation that the approach that I take to life and to the human experience is fiercely reductive. And it's more about getting the stuff that is in our way out of the way, so we can see the clear path forward. And I have a group online. It's called Our Mindful Life on Facebook. And it talks about these subjects. And I've got a 21-day program called Spring into Mindfulness that is there that will help you incorporate some of the stuff that we've been talking about on this podcast into your daily routine if you desire to do so. How about you, Miriam?
Thank you, Bobby. I am actually, for the next about a month, I'm going to be drowning in exams.
No drowning.
No drowning. Oh, yeah, we've got a fjord right out here, so I can just dive right in. I'm kidding, actually. But I am devoting some time to my exams, of course. But so I'm not offering, I have a program I'm going to be offering once I'm done with my exam, and it's focusing on getting clear on your goals. And I start with that. I actually call it goal. I start with that as a springboard to start putting your goals into realizing your goals, bringing them out into life, getting present to your goals, present with what you want, and then being present to how to put it into action and get there. And whether we use anticipatory joy or not, well, we'll have to see. I see nothing wrong with looking forward to achieving a goal.
There you go.
But also there's a great joy in each step that takes me towards my goal. So eye on the prize and then enjoy the ride. So I will be getting to that once I'm done with my exams in mid-June, maybe earlier depending on how it goes. So keep your eye on in the Presence Posse, because we can put information about our offers in there, and then you'll know more about us, or contact me at the information you see on the screen. I have a group on Facebook also called Relation Revolution, of course, and you're more than welcome to join that as well. So rounding off for this evening, the topic has been Presence and Joy, and I've had Bobby Cobb and Danielle McMahon with me from the Presence Posse, Miriam Siegel. We look forward to seeing you again next Monday, same time, same place, not necessarily the same members of the posse, to speak on another topic connected to presence. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and you're more than welcome to watch the replay and ask questions and make comments, even though you weren't with us live, and we will get to them as well, so we can keep this going if you like. Take good care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.